The land is life. From deep within sustains our sustenance. The harvest that it grows, nourished by our labor, joy, and pain. Rain flows with the sweat and blood of those who work each day, of those who fought for truth and freedom in every necessary way. The sun beats heat upon the land is life we shall win. From deep within our hearts we know the harvest grows. The martyrs bleed. Life flows as conception to birth. As thought grows into deed, the human bends close to the earth to plant the living seed. Or, as people sometimes say to children, big oaks from little acorns grow.
Written in books and in songs that we've been mistreated and wronged.
Good evening and welcome to Indian Land Radio, Alcatraz Island. This is John Trudell welcoming you on behalf of the Indians of all tribes. And tonight we have with us Mrs. 𝘏𝘪𝘴𝘵𝘰𝘪𝘮𝘦 Means and her son Danon. 𝘏𝘏𝘪𝘴 was on the program right after we first started broadcasting And 𝘏𝘏𝘴𝘵𝘰𝘪𝘮𝘦 is a Bannock Indian from Fort Hall, Idaho. It's a Bannock reservation there, 𝘏𝘏𝘴𝘏𝘏𝘏?
It's a combination of two tribes, Shoshone and Bannock, but I'm from the Bannock tribe.
Okay. 𝘏𝘏𝘴𝘏𝘮 is a student at the University of California in Berkeley. Are there any other Indian people from your reservation at Berkeley?
Well, just this past quarter, my younger sister has gotten into the university, but there isn't anyone else from my reservation now.
What is it like on your reservation? It's the Bannock Shoshone reservation, or just Bannock reservation at Fort Hall, Idaho?
Bannock and Shoshone.
Okay.
Well, I don't.
Well, education-wise, how many people go through schooling from your reservation that are able to meet the requirements or qualifications to get into a four-year college?
Well, hardly anybody, really. The education standards are so bad that the average would be about the 5th grade. And before anyone gets to that age, especially among the males, then they're usually shipped to prison. So there hasn't been very many that have ever even reached that level, I guess you might say. And then BIA gets a hold of them before that and sends them out on vocational training into the cities through relocation. So it's pretty well limited.
Get these across to you, and I'll stop when I run out of time. And the first one is a small article put out by the National Indian Youth Council, and it's titled "Life in America." Over the past 2 years, it's been roughly only twice as deadly to be an Indian in America as it has been to be a soldier in Vietnam. In 1965 and 66, 6,373 deaths among 472,000 U.S. soldiers cycled to Vietnam, and at the same time there were 10,178 deaths among 400,000 identifiable Indians in America. Escalation in 66, however, made it nearly as dangerous to be the soldier as the American Indian, but not quite. There were 5,008 GI casualties compared to 5,129 Indian deaths. In the past 3 years, more Indian children below the age of 18 have died in this country than the 6,628 U.S. combat casualties for the entire Vietnam War as of the end of 1966. And most of these children were below the age of 6. At the going rates, if the 398,000 soldiers now in Vietnam were instead Indian children, they would stand an almost triple chance of dying, and all before the age of draft eligibility or voluntary enlistment. And if the U.S. soldiers who've gone to Vietnam had instead transformed into Indian children in America, their death could now be exceeding 18,000. And if all Americans were Indians, the annual American death toll would be increased by almost 1/3, or a calculated 682,500 total, exceeding the entire Indian population of the United States. And if all Indians were statistically white men, Indian deaths would be diminished by about 40.2%. 2,267 Indians would not die each year, but now do, and most of these are children. And the Korean War casualties, there were 33,630 in 37 months from 1950 to 1953. And the Indian deaths since the end of the Korean War have totaled 68,625, of which 27,757 were below the age of 18. And a higher percentage of Indians have fought in the nation's wars of the present century, with probable exception of the present war, than any other racial or ethnic group in America, even prior to being subject to the draft. But now is the time to stop, look, and listen to the Indian children dying, because they do not stop when wars do. And suicides in a small town. Among the 500 Indian residents of the 𝘏𝘯𝘠𝘴, Washington, on the Quinault Indian Reservation, only 30 or so adolescents have attempted suicide since 1962. Only half as bad as it sounds, however, since only 14 of these had the guts briefly to shoot themselves with high-powered rifles. And U.S. public health hospitals are a farce. In fact, if you were hurt in Vietnam and you didn't receive a mortal wound, your chances of surviving would be greater than they would be on an Indian reservation. The doctors are given a choice of either serving in the armed forces or on Indian reservations. Many of these doctors are little better than interns, and on most reservations they don't perform any type of operations. They send patients hundreds of miles by ambulance to receive operations that should be performed on the reservations, but aren't, because the doctors simply aren't qualified. Recently, a young boy on a reservation in South Dakota accidentally shot himself in the foot. The doctor put a cast on it, and the boy died a few days later of blood poisoning. This is the type of treatment Indians receive on reservations. We see in their teachings that it is better to give than to receive. Hypocritical teachings like this have often been taught to Indian people. This line of interpretation which we believe in. We see in their teachings that it is better to give than to receive. Hypocritical teachings like this have often been taught to Indian people. This lying misinterpretation, which we believed in momentarily, was used only as an instrument to fraud, grand larceny, murder, rape, genocide, and war. Churches and religions have failed miserably to relieve human sufferings in the United States, and from their very words, in that race is a gift of God, which we have tragically abused. Demanded from the churches and are receiving reparation. We have not made a single black man contact. Many of them returned to the reservation more disillusioned and defeated than when they left. this evening we have Chief 𝘏𝘯𝘥𝘰𝘪𝘮𝘚. He's a medicine man. Sundance chief is what he is, and he's a medicine man from Rosebud, South Dakota. And he is here this evening. Well, he arrived Wednesday, and he'll be here until approximately next Wednesday. But this evening we are holding a 𝘏𝘯𝘥𝘰𝘪𝘮𝘚 ceremony, which is a religious ceremony, and it involves a sweat lodge, which we are building. This ceremony is going to be held in the traditional old Indian way, and we are going to pray for the island and for guidance through our way. We hold the rock as the 4 words that we're going to use in our prayers, and this all fits in very nicely because we hold the rock as 4 words, the north, south, east, and west, the 4 directions. And it's only fitting that we do this here and work for guidance for our people through our own religious ceremonies. Because as you know, Indian people lost the West last, so it's only right that we start working for our people from the West. And Chief 𝘏𝘏𝘏𝘏𝘏 told me the night he arrived, he said something that was very interesting. He said he was at home and he was out in the countryside. This was about 6 months ago. And he said he knew this was going to happen, but he was trying to associate it with somewhere in South Dakota because he saw the rock. He could see this that Indian people were going to have. He could associate this, tie it in together with Indian people and the rocks. But he was looking for a rock landmark in his area because he said he did not see the water surrounding the rock. question has been asked, why did we choose to occupy an abandoned prison rather than a more desirable land location? The answers to that question are many, and to we Indian people, they are obvious. Alcatraz Island is a symbol of what we Indian people have today. It bears a remarkable resemblance to reservation life, as neither have enough water, there are no natural resources, and the government could not find any use for it. Thus, Alcatraz became discarded land. We think it has more value than that of a discarded prison. The stigma that a convict must bear throughout his life is a burden we Indians are familiar with. Bars and barbed wire are not our jailers. As we are prisoners of inequality, discrimination, and social contempt and injustices, we have suffered because we are now a minority. We survived the stealing of land and lives. We survived the lies and the deceit and the neglect of a non-Indian America. The white society has punished us for many reasons. Some we can recognize. Our land was what you wanted, but beyond that we don't understand. Why do you not give us an education? That is something we have always asked for. We now demand that you stop taking our land and our right to be Indian. We see you trying to turn us into white people called Indians. You have stereotyped us, suppressed the history of our heritage and culture in your history books, and you separate our children from their parents with your schools that do not teach. You have forced your religion on us, but have only shown us the decorations and never the meaning. We have lived with your religious practices and are not impressed. We have seen and felt what your white society has given us. Yours is a competitive society, and that's where the Alcatraz symbolism is. Alcatraz was a prison, a symbol of what your society has produced. We never needed prisons. This land has suffered as many people have suffered, as we have suffered. Together with this land, we shall work to cease the suffering. It is a beginning. And good night from Indian Land Radio.
Ever since last November, when a group of American Indians took up residence on Alcatraz Island, the former federal penitentiary in San Francisco Bay, a sort of dialogue has been taking place between the Indians and the United States government. At the invitation of the Interior Department, the group on Alcatraz, working in consultation with Indian leaders all over the United States, presented a proposal regarding the future and use of Alcatraz. This is how 𝘏𝘪𝘮𝘯𝘥 described that proposal.
Yes, we cooperated with the government in that they told us that we had to submit a proposal. So we submitted a planning grant proposal asking for about somewhere in the area of $300,000 for a year's 53-week study, of which 4 months of this would have been used to recruit help, volunteers, paid people, to study the development of the island. And at the end of 4 months' time, we would have taken 1 week out and had an Indian workshop where we would have invited Indian people from all over the United States to come to the island. And then we would just have everyone put their ideas into it. And then after the end of this week, we would go on an 8-month plan here of studying the island, putting the ideas together, and coming out with a working plan to development of the island.
On Tuesday, March 31st, Robert Robertson, federal negotiator for the Interior Department, while assuring the Indians that their proposal had been considered, announced a totally different plan, which the government would be willing to implement, namely that title to the island remain with the federal government and that it be turned into a park dedicated to all Indian people. On Tuesday, April 7th, that's today, the Indians of all tribes called a press conference on Alcatraz to issue their reply to the Robertson proposal. 𝘏𝘪𝘮𝘯𝘥 read that reply.
Indians of all tribes incorporated replied to the counter-proposal of Robert Robertson for the USA. We, the Indians of all tribes on Alcatraz, and the Bannock organization in the Bay Area, negotiated with the U.S. government in good faith concerning the planning grant proposal to provide funds for the development of the island. We dealt with the government on their terms. They asked us to submit a proposal, which we did, expecting them to honor their statements concerning Indian self-determination. The U.S. government speaks and has spoken in the past of having Indian people control their own lives and their own destiny, and yet the proposal that we submitted to the U.S. government concerning Alcatraz was rejected. Not only was it turned down, it was never considered. In Mr. Robertson's statement, he said that they considered the proposal and rejected it because it was unfeasible. All that we get out of this meeting with the U.S. government and their representative is that they are going to continue to do as they have done in the past, which is to do our thinking for us and run things their way. We met with them in complete good faith. We submitted the proposal they asked us to submit, asking for funds in the form of a planning grant proposal to develop the island. We want to build an Indian cultural and spiritual complex that will serve all Indian people. Our cultural complex will be composed of a Native American university, which will educate Indians to the skills and knowledge relevant to improve the lives and spirits of all Indian people. An American Indian Spiritual Center, which will practice our tribal, religious, and sacred healing ceremonies. An Indian Center of Ecology, which will train and support our young people in scientific research and practice to restore our lands and waters to their pure and natural state. We will work to depollute the air and waters of the Bay Area. We will seek to restore fish and animal life to the area and to revitalize sea life, which has been threatened by the white man's way.
The land is life, from deep within sustains our sustenance. The harvest that it grows, nourished by our labor, joy and pain, rain flows with the sweat and blood of those who work each day, of those who fought for truth and freedom in every necessary way. The sun beats heat upon the land is life. From deep within our hearts we know the harvest grows, the martyrs bleed. Life flows, as conception to birth, as thought grows into deed, the human bends close to the earth, to plant the living seed. Tree, tree grow. Rain, rain, send. I was an oak, now I'm a willow, now I can bend.
tiene.
My time here, I hate to get into anything else because I've just got a couple of minutes left. I have a small poem here about Alcatraz. Symbol of oppression, rock prison of liberation, I come to take you into my possession. You possessed many braves full of indignation against the oppressive system. Yes, I come to change you into a symbol of redemption and to include you, rock reservation of the melting pot in the struggle for liberation. O free territory of the Pacific, you at one time were beautiful, but now you are covered with ugliness. Stay on the side of the struggle. or disappear into the deep water of the Pacific as my buffalo disappeared into the American plains. Alcatraz, death buffalo of the sea, I want to revive you, that my children may ride you into the stampede for freedom and hope for their minds and bodies. This time we fight not with bows and arrows, but with pencils and books. Yes, I want my children to be worthy of my grandfather Geronimo. I want to teach them that he did not die in vain. And that's about all the time we have. And so on behalf of Indians of all tribes, I'd like to wish you all a pleasant good evening. And thanks to the Pacifica Network, this program was brought to you. Good night.